Hello and welcome to Wrestling and welcome to this Hell in a Cell pay-per-view post-mortem. A few days late I must say, but I've been very busy, so that's why we're a little late on this. So, the pay-per-view, didn't really split opinion. It was a total negative. I put a poll out on our Twitter, which there is a link to here on screen if you do fancy joining us on Twitter. And it came back overwhelmingly negative. No positives at all from you guys on Twitter. But there was one or two, I think, and I will talk about them as we go on. So we'll get to the negative bits as we go. Main event, I'm sure you're all aware of that. So the pay-per-view started with Becky versus Sasha for the Raw Women's Championship. And I liked this match. I thought it was a good match. I thought both women really gave their all and came with some really creative spots for the match. So we'll break it down and go through some bits. Before it even really starts, Sasha jumps Becky and the cell's not all the way down, which they've done quite a lot in recent years. I'm sure this happened fairly recently. I don't remember who it was that did it though, but I seem to remember this happening fairly recently. So they start brawling sort of outside of the cage and stuff like that. Becky gets laid out and Sasha then returns to the ring. She starts gloating as she comes back out to get Becky. Becky kicks the door shut on her. The ref tried to get the match going, but Becky steals the chain from the door, which they were trying to lock, and she takes it off and she starts using it as a weapon. She puts it around kind of like brass knuckles. So the cell isn't enough for Becky. It's the structure that you can just use. She starts grabbing all these different weapons from under the ring, and then Sasha manages to blindside her with a chair. And then she proceeds to utilise the ladder, but Becky returns the favour with the chair. Sasha Banks hits Lynch with a wicked Meteora into the ladder. It's rested on the corner of the cell. That looked really good, really brutal. Nice use of the cell. She traps Becky's arm in the cell door and starts slamming it shut about 7 times. She went mad. She was just slamming the door shut on her arm. This was clever little bit of booking, this, because it takes Lynch's attack of the disarmer out of the equation if Banks can damage that arm. Sasha sets Becky up on a chair and she lands a Meteora off the turnbuckle straight into a pin. Really like that as well. I thought that looked really cool. As I said, some creative spots in this match. There's a drop toe hold onto a chair on Sasha, and then a running bulldog from Becky. 1-2, but a kick out. Banks finds some kendo sticks, uses them on Becky. She sets them up in the corner of the cell, kind of like how the Usos did a couple of years ago. Becky reverses though, and it's Sasha that goes headfirst into the kendo sticks that have been set up. Then Becky sets a chair on those kendo sticks, so it's kind of partway up the cell. A chair suspended on some kendo sticks, and she sits Sasha up on there. So she sat sort of maybe, 2 meters off of the ground on a chair on a cell. It was really crazy to look at. And Becky runs on the ring edge and does a missile drop kick onto Sasha, who is sat on that chair midway up the cell. She then follows this up with a leg drop, but it's still not enough to finish the match. Sasha Banks hits Becky through a table with another Meteora, and somehow Becky Lynch kicks out. I don't really know how she managed that. She then locks in a Banks statement, but with a kendo stick, and I'm thinking that at this point oh my god, Sasha's gonna win. Becky manages to scramble free and she leads Sasha around the edge of the ring, but Banks does a little reversal and throws Becky into another chair that was set up in the cell ages ago. It's kind of like hooked into the cell and sticking out at sort of like an angle. So a nice little early setup in the match, that, and then used later on. Sasha Banks then starts to fill the ring with chairs. She's just lobbing them in. Becky's there getting sort of covered in all these chairs. Sasha then goes to climb the turnbuckle, but she takes too long. Becky jumps up and hits her with a super Bexploder onto that pile of chairs in the ring, and then she locks in the disarmer. Now I thought that maybe she shouldn't have won with the disarmer due to the use of the cell door being slammed on her arm earlier on. It would have been cooler for her to win from that Bexploder, but still a really good match. Brilliant stuff from two of the top female superstars. Really creative spots throughout, and a very hard hitting match, so a good opening match. Following this, we got Reigns and Bryan versus Rowan and Harper in a tornado tag. This one was okay as well, to be fair. Very chaotic though, as you'd expect with it being a tornado tag. Early on, Harper and Bryan land awkwardly, and it looks like Harper's hurt his knee, but he manages to shake it off and continue. Reigns gets hit in the face with some steel steps, and it's down to Bryan to fight alone for a little while. Roman then eventually comes back to rescue. There's yes kicks, drive-bys, suicide dives, and it leads to everyone being laid out outside of the ring. Rowan and Harper set up the commentary desk, and they tear part of the barricade down and use it against Roman Reigns, who's then sort of wiped out into the audience, and we don't see him again for a little while. They go to take Bryan through the table, but he uses the Hurricane Rana to escape on Harper. Rowan still stood there, and then all of a sudden you see Roman Reigns pop up from the back and like run along and hit a spear on Rowan through the other announce desk. Really cool moment that. Bryan hits Harper with many drop kicks. He sets Harper up for a Hurricane Rana from the top, but Harper manages to block that, and then he lands a sit-out powerbomb on Daniel Bryan from the top turnbuckle. Then there's a Superman punch, a running knee, a spear, all to Harper, and Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan win the match. After the match, Reigns offers a handshake to Bryan, and Bryan initially refuses that. Instead, he wants a hug, and they have a nice little hug after that. So I guess Daniel Bryan's back to being face. It looks that way. I'm happy with that. I liked his heel run. I thought he was very good at it, but he's just one of those people that just suits being babyface, I think. Next match was Randy Orton versus Mustafa Ali. Methodically slow, as always with Randy Orton. He takes Ali to bits outside the ring, dumping him onto the commentary desks at a leisurely pace. Ali manages some counters due to his agility, of course, high flyer. And he does manage to take charge of the match, but he misses his 054. Randy then takes over, lands the vintage DDT. He then goes for an RKO, and Ali counters it with one of the most unique ways I've ever seen the RKO countered. He sort of goes into a handstand. It was so good to see. It's such an inventive way of countering that move. Ali then tries to do the pop-up face buster where he rolls through, but as he's flying through the air, Randy Orton then strikes and hits his RKO, and he wins the match. But yeah, a cool moment or two in that one, but pretty bog standard otherwise than that. We got the women's tag match following this, and it was obviously Bliss and Cross, who are the tag champs, versus the Kabuki Warriors. Now, let me start by saying that I hate the way they've mashed up Asuka's and Kari's themes. It doesn't work at all. It just suddenly stops, and then you get the yo ho do 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 do. It just doesn't fit at all. They need to come up with some original music, I think, for that. I don't understand what's happening with WWE at the moment in terms of tag teams. They seem to just want to, when they put two people together, they don't want to make a theme for them. And I don't know if it's because they know that they're not going to have a tag run for that long or not. So they just at the minute seem to be just mashing themes together. Some of them work and some of them don't, but this one for me doesn't work. Anyway, the early stages of the match are dominated by Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Eventually, Asuka manages to turn things around, and Kari eventually makes it back into the ring herself as well after being tagged in, and she does a little cheeky eye poke to Nikki. So, interestingly, some heel moves coming from the Kabuki Warriors. This causes Nikki to fall off the ring edge. Nikki then runs and jumps into the ring, making the ref stop her. He's trying to hold her off, and he misses the pin on Alexa Bliss, and it was a 3 count, so they would have lost at that moment, but the ref missed it. Kairi Sane goes for the insane elbow on Nikki Cross, but Nikki manages to get her knees up and block that. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Asuka blows green mist into Nikki's eyes while the ref wasn't looking, and then she lands the side kick, straight side kick, and the Kabuki Warriors win the Women's Tag Team Championships. And I wasn't sure about the green mist thing at first, but I think it does lend to the namesake of the tag team. So yeah, interesting. A little bit of heelish tactics there. So we've got new champions for the ladies tag title. We get another tag match following this, and it's the OC, which is obviously comprised of Gallows, Anderson and AJ Styles, versus the Viking Raiders and a special partner. So the Vikings have brought along with them the Monster Among Men. Interesting that he's sort of been used in this way. Obviously it looks like they're setting something up with him and Tyson Fury to go forward, but they kind of just had to squeeze him into the pay-per-view, I guess. I don't know. It felt a little bit Monday Night Raw, this one. Anyway, Ivar is commanding the ring, moving around like nothing for his size. It's crazy how well he moves around the ring for the size of the guy. Eric doesn't have much luck though when he's in, and all of the OC have a go on him. AJ tries some cheap shots on the guys on the ring edge, but Braun just grabs his arm and overpowers him. Interesting to see AJ being used in that sort of way. Braun is wiped out and he goes missing for much of the match. Eventually, he's tagged back in and he absolutely kills AJ Styles. He runs around the ring, charging all of the OC. And once he's back in the ring, though, AJ averts him and locks in the calf crusher. Everyone gets involved now, move after move, until it's just AJ and Braun left again. Braun goes for the power slam, but he's chop blocked and then jumped by all of the OC, and the match is ended there. It is thrown out and the crowd boo. Viking Raiders come to Braun's aid post-match. They fly out of the ring for a double suicide dive. AJ attempts a forearm on Braun, who just swats him out of the air with a right punch, big right punch, and he's there like this, and it's a sign to Tyson Fury. After this, AJ's on jelly legs. They try and get him out of the ring. The OC are explaining that he's been knocked out, and it was quite funny to see. So AJ's sort of transitioned into this kind of chicken shit heel type figure, I guess, now. We'll see how he does with that role going forward. Street Profits are backstage talking shite when Carmella runs into them. Tamina pins her for the 24/7 title and then runs into Tyler Breeze, who gives her this kind of look as if to say, I want the title. But Tamina just clocks him and runs off. Next match is King Corbin versus Chad Gable. Again, another kind of Monday Night Raw vibe to this one. I do like the Royal version of Corbin's theme. This is a mashup that I think does work. I quite like the way that it leads into each other. It's a weird mix, but it just kind of works for me. Corbin gets on the mic and he dubs Chad Gable Shorty Gable, which was rumoured a long time ago that was going to be the new name for Chad Gable, Shorty Gable or Shorty G, and it looks like they're going with that, although kind of coming from the angle of that Corbin is the one that's called him it. Gable's hot off the blocks, and Corey says a really good line. So obviously earlier on in the week on SmackDown, The Rock said that King Corbin is a super tough dude, and the crowd started chanting STD. And during this match, Graves said that Gable is being a vicious dude. When will they start chanting that? I thought that was very funny. Well done, Corey Graves. The crowd are just totally silent for this match all the way through, unless they're chanting boring or AE dub. Both guys hit picture perfect signatures. Corbin goes to get his scepter, but the ref stops him, and in the midst of all this, Gable rolls him up for the win. So King Corbin, as I said, is the fall guy for WWE, and he does it well. Charlotte and Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Now, before this match, we did get some more 24/7 shenanigans. It looked like they messed this up a little bit, because Tamina stood around waiting for ages, waiting for the other guys to get their cue or something. So they messed the timing on this or something. But anyway, she's running away from R-Truth, and she uses Funaki as a human shield, which was funny. I thought Funaki was going to win the 24/7 title. I was really hoping that was going to happen, but no, that isn't what happened. Then Carmella pops up from behind, and she super kicks Tamina, and R-Truth pins for his 20th reign as a 24/7 champion. Crazy. I do enjoy it though. Anyway, back to the match that was supposed to start. Bayley is wrestling dirty. She has a poke to the eye on Charlotte. Now, again, I always mention this, but I can't, well, not that I can't say it, I don't think it's good when you have matches and people are doing the same stuff. So obviously, Kairi Sane did the eye poke earlier on, and now we're getting Bayley doing it. I just wish they would kind of not do the same things throughout the night. She then works the leg of Charlotte, trying to neutralise for that figure 4 into the figure 8. Charlotte turns the tables with a natural selection, and on the pin, Bayley grabs the rope at like 2.75. It was so close. Charlotte goes for the moonsault, but Bayley gets her knees up. Bayley gets a pin in and uses the ropes as leverage, but the ref spots that, and as the ref is talking to her, Charlotte lands a big boot, locks in that figure 4 into the figure 8. Bayley taps out, and Charlotte is now a 10-time women's champion in WWE. Incredible stuff. A lot of title changes happening. Well, more than I would have thought, to be honest. Not a lot, but more than I would have thought for this pay-per-view. Great to see Charlotte get to the 10, and she really is probably the best in the business in the women's game for sure. Bayley has a little tantrum post-match, which that also went on very long. The camera just lingered on her for about 2 minutes, and she was just being a child, basically. Gable gives an interview backstage saying that he's okay being called Shorty so long as people recognise that he was the winner of the match. He's poking fun at King Corbin, and then all of a sudden King Corbin appears and he just clocks Gable and beats him up in the corridor. Okay, now we get to the main event and the huge talking point of this pay-per-view and of wrestling this past week. Seth Rollins defending his Universal title against the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. Now, going into it, personally, I thought if they do anything other than give Bray Wyatt the title, it's a disaster. And they didn't give him the title. But let's talk through it. It wasn't bad just for that reason. So, Bray jumps Seth before, I thought it was before the ring, but I'm not, before the bell is rang, but I'm not sure it was now. But it's certainly straight off the bat. The ring is all drenched in red light, weirdly. Like, that was weird to get used to. It was a bit like, I don't know what it would have looked like in the arena, because it seemed very dark on my screen. I thought it was cool to start with, but then I thought, are they going to do this all match? Are they going to leave the red lights on? And they did. It was something different, I guess, but yeah. Seth gets a kendo stick, and he's just going mad on Bray, just whacking him on the back, on the chest, and Bray's just like taking it, no selling it, and this kind of worked for me. I thought this was a good thing, because obviously he's in his Fiend get-up, which I always say about Finn Balor. When he is in the demon paint, he doesn't seem to wrestle in any different manner, or things aren't different really. He's just a little bit spooky looking. Whereas with Bray in the Fiend outfit, he was no-selling the kendo stick. Now, no-selling has its own sort of issues, I guess, but in this context, I think it worked, and it gives the Fiend character something extra. He tosses Seth around into the cell many times. This is obviously, they go back outside, sort of on the ring edge, and Bray's just throwing Seth all over like a rag doll. Seth manages to set up a table but he suffers a Sister Abigail into the cell edge. Finally, Seth rallies. He straight sidekicks the Fiend onto the table, sends him through with a splash, but he's almost straight back up to his feet, so another big no-sell. Again, this is kind of working for me at the minute. Seth then stomps him into the ring, but once again the Fiend comes straight back up. And at this point I'm starting to think like, whoa, what are they doing now? So Seth jumps off the top rope, but he's caught into another Sister Abigail. But it's not enough, he kicks out, and this is where I'm starting to think like, what are they actually going to do with this match? Bray does that weird neck break thing, which I don't know if I like them doing that. I mean, they've banned moves in the past because of how dangerous they are. Well, doing that little neck action thing, if people copy that, that could go horribly wrong. Yeah, I don't know, it hasn't broke anyone's neck. And then Wyatt gets this really cartoonish mallet from under the ring, and then that's where you're kind of like, what are they doing? It's the one that we've seen in Firefly Funhouse, but it makes sense in the Firefly Funhouse. It doesn't make sense to have it really in an actual match. It looks kind of goofy, and it takes away from the Fiend character. Anyway, there was a cool spot with it. The Fiend, he just runs into Seth, and he sort of like just barges him into the cell and pins him against it with this mallet. Seth comes out of it and he stomps the Fiend onto the mallet, and then he hits him with a big knee in the ring. He rolls him back in the ring, gets up on the turnbuckle, hits that big knee off the turnbuckle, and then it's just a barrage of stomp, 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 stomp. And I'm like, oh my god, what are they doing? He's murdering the Fiend here, but it's not enough to put him away. So Seth then lands a pedigree, and he kicks out at 1. Now this is the point where I'm like, this has got silly. Like, all those stomps, all like the pedigree, everything about it, and he kicks out at 1. Why did they decide to do this? Of course, it makes the Fiend look really strong still, but just have him win the match. Seth then continues to do stomps. He's doing super kicks, straight side kicks, everything. He gets a chair now. We see a headshot. Now, that was interesting. We've not seen one of them for like in a decade or so. They did it in a way that was safe. Obviously, they don't do the unprotected headshot anymore. Bray was laid out on the mat, and they kind of did it at an angle that made it look like he hit him in the head. But really interesting to see that they did that. Again, after this, he kicks out at 1. And I'm just like, at this point, what's going on? Seth lays a chair onto his face. He gets a ladder, and then he smashes the ladder down into Bray's face, well, onto the chair. It's a 2 count this time, so it is having some effect finally. So Seth starts losing control at this point. He doesn't know how he's going to put Bray away, so he buries him in that chair. He puts a chair onto him and the ladder. Then he gets his toolbox from under the ring, and he's smashing that into Bray's face. There's wrenches and all sorts flying all over the ring. So really cool visuals, but we've gone beyond the point of like no return here with this match. So Seth then finally gets a sledgehammer. He's had enough. He wants to end this match. The ref stops Seth Rollins. He says, you can't do this. Think about what you're doing. You're going to kill a man. You can't do this. This is not you. This is not who Seth Rollins is. And Seth kind of like stops, and he thinks about it, and he thinks, yeah, the ref's right. But then no. He slams the sledgehammer down into Bray's face, and the ref calls for the bell. It's a Hell in a Cell match. Don't end a Hell in a Cell match. It's surely that's the rules, right? How can it be called off? I don't understand. So the cell starts to lift. The match has been thrown out. So I guess Bray won it via DQ, but then it can't be a DQ. It's so confusing. The refs and the medics enter the ring. Seth goes back for more, and then Bray kicks back into life. And they're putting him on a stretcher, by the way, at this point. And I'm thinking, oh my god, they're going to stretch the Fiend out? Like, what? Don't do that. He's supposed to be like this monster character. But he comes back into life, and he locks the mandible claw in. He then runs Seth to the outside, and he hits a Sister Abigail on him on the outside. The crowd are furious. They're chanting AE-dub. They're chanting restart the match. And I'm not surprised, to be honest. The Fiend then lifts up the protective mat, and he hits Seth onto the exposed concrete of the arena. and he locks in another mandible claw at this point, and blood starts pouring out from Seth's mouth. And that was kind of cool. That looked like a cool visual, and they were doing the whole screechy noise thing and the lights flashing, and that did look effective. The pay-per-view fades to black after we've seen the Fiend looking back down the ramp. The crowd are booing, and everyone's furious. And I have to say, it was just a bizarre way to do this. Why have the match if that was how it was going to go? For me, they should have just put the belt on the Fiend. That would have been just the easy thing to do. He should have won, have him win, and then do the stuff that Seth did to him instead of the other way around. Have Seth stretchered off. It really isn't that difficult at times to book these things, surely. Like, obviously I don't do that. I don't know, but to me, it writes itself. You've got a monster. Have him win the match and then do all those things that Seth did to him, and I think that would have been a more fitting way to end this pay-per-view. So, an interesting one. People really aren't happy about it online, and I have to say, for me, the opening match was great. I really enjoyed the opening match, and I thought it was going to be a good pay-per-view. Then we got the second match was okay, and then sort of from then on it was very Monday Night Raw. Didn't have that sort of big pay-per-view feel, and then that horrible ending. So I'm going to give the pay-per-view a 4 out of 10. A really misjudged effort from WWE, and only really that Becky and Sasha match is saving it from a lower rating for me. Let me know what you guys think. Comment below. Make sure to subscribe and keep up with all our videos here on Welcome to Wrestling. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.